The silk sheets felt foreign against her skin. Myra's eyes opened slowly, the Miami sunrise cutting through floor-to-ceiling windows like a knife. The penthouse suite was empty now. No sound except the distant hum of traffic 40 stories below and the soft whisper of air conditioning. She turned her head. The pillow beside her still held the indent of where he had been. Jareth, her boss, the man who had whispered her name like a prayer just hours ago. The bathroom door stood open. No steam, no running water, just silence. Myra sat up, pulling the white hotel robe around her shoulders. Her internship badge lay on the nightstand next to a half-empty champagne bottle, the same badge that had gotten her into this exclusive bachelor party weekend in the first place. Her phone buzzed. A text from her roommate back in Atlanta. "How's the work trip going?" Work trip, that's what she had called it. That's what Jareth had called it too when he personally invited her to help coordinate his bachelor party events. "I need someone I can trust," he had said, those green eyes holding hers just a moment too long across his executive desk. She walked to the bathroom. Her reflection stared back from the marble-framed mirror. Mascara smudged, lips still swollen, hair tangled in ways that told stories she wasn't ready to face. The shower ran hot against her skin. She scrubbed until her arms ached, trying to wash away the memory of his hands, his whispers, his promises. "I should have met you first, Myra, before all of this, before her, Sabine Whitmore, banking heiress, perfect blonde, perfect smile, perfect life, the woman Jareth was marrying today." Myra's stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. Today, the wedding was today. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand with shaking fingers. The screen showed 11:47 a.m. Beneath her missed calls was a notification from Jareth's wedding planner app, an itinerary she had helped organize during late nights at the office. 2 p.m., ceremony at Coral Gables Presbyterian. 3:30 p.m., reception. At the Ritz-Carlton 6 p.m., first dance 8 p.m., cake cutting. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the schedule. Every detail perfect, every moment planned, every second accounted for except the hour she had spent in his arms, believing his whispered confessions were real. The elevator ride down felt endless. 40 floors of mirrored walls reflecting her pale face back at her. The lobby buzzed with wedding guests checking out, their voices bright with anticipation. Women in pastel dresses, men adjusting cufflinks, everyone heading to witness Jareth's perfect day. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story." The flight back to Atlanta passed in a blur of clouds and regret. Myra stared out the window, her mind replaying every moment. The way he had looked at her during the dinner meeting Friday night, the invitation to stay for drinks, the vulnerability in his voice when he talked about cold feet, the way he had kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. All lies, all performance, all preparation for a wedding that was happening right now while she flew home with his scent still on her skin. Monday morning came too fast. Jareth Industries Tower stretched toward the sky like a glass monument to success. Myra's internship badge trembled in her hand as she swiped through security. The elevator carried her to the executive floor where she had spent countless evenings helping with wedding preparations. The reception area hummed with activity. Other interns shuffled papers. Executives strode past in expensive suits. Life continued as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Jareth's office door stood open. She could see him through the glass walls, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing with his free hand. Wedding ring gleaming on his finger. The same hands that had traced patterns on her skin now wore the symbol of his commitment to someone else. Their eyes met across the office space. For a moment, the world stopped. His conversation faltered. His hand froze mid-gesture. Then he looked away, turned his back, continued his call as if she were just another piece of office furniture. Myra's chest tightened. Her breathing grew shallow. She ducked into the nearest bathroom, barely making it to the stall before her knees buckled. The nausea hit like a wave. She gripped the cold porcelain, her body rejecting everything she had tried to keep down. The coffee from her flight, the granola bar she had forced herself to eat, the bitter taste of betrayal that coated her tongue. When the retching stopped, she sat back against the stall wall. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from her mother and a text from her best friend asking about the work trip. She couldn't answer, couldn't explain, couldn't find words for what had happened in that penthouse suite. The bathroom door opened. Heels clicked against tile. Voices of other employees discussing weekend plans, Monday meetings, normal things that belonged to a world where bosses didn't seduce their interns hours before marrying someone else. Myra waited until silence returned. Then she stood, washed her face, and stared at her reflection again. Same girl who had believed his lies. Same girl who had given him everything. Same girl who now felt hollow and used and invisible. The workday stretched ahead like a prison sentence. She would sit at her desk, file his papers, answer his calls, pretend that Friday night had been a dream and Monday morning was reality. But as she walked back to her cubicle, past his glass office where he continued to ignore her existence, her stomach churned again. Not from heartbreak this time, from something else entirely, something that would change everything. Ever trusted someone only to watch them pretend you don't exist? Drop a comment if this part hit you. The magnolia trees were blooming when Myra first stepped off the Greyhound bus in Atlanta. 6 months earlier, before Jareth, before the lies, before everything fell apart. Her suitcase held everything she owned. $300 cash, a business, degree from a small Georgia college, and dreams bigger than the small town that had raised her. Peachtree Street stretched before her like a promise. Glass towers reaching toward heaven. People in sharp suits walking with purpose. This was where she would build something real. Something her grandmother would have been proud of. The apartment she found was barely larger than a closet, shared with 2 other girls who worked retail and dreamed of something better. But it was hers. Her first taste of independence in a city that didn't know her father had worked double shifts at the paper mill, or that her mother cleaned houses to pay for her college. Jareth Industries had been a long shot. The internship program only accepted 20 students from hundreds of applications, but Myra's grades were perfect. Her interview answers were honest, and when the acceptance email arrived, she screamed so loud her roommates came running. The first day, she wore her only good dress, black, simple, purchased from a clearance rack but pressed until it looked expensive. Her hands shook as she walked through the lobby with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. This was a different world, a world where money whispered instead of shouting. The other interns looked different. Designer bags, manicured nails, confidence that came from never worrying about rent money. They clustered together during orientation, discussing spring break trips to Europe and summer houses in the Hamptons. Myra sat alone, took notes, listened carefully. Excellence is expected here, the HR director announced. Mediocrity has no place at Jareth Industries. Some of you will thrive. Others will discover this environment isn't for them. The work was demanding. 18-hour days. Projects with impossible deadlines. Executives who treated interns like expensive coffee machines. But Myra thrived in the chaos. She stayed late when others left early, caught mistakes that seasoned employees missed, made herself indispensable. Jareth noticed her first during a quarterly review meeting. She was taking minutes when he walked in, commanding the room without saying a word. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading through dark hair at his temples. Every person in that conference room straightened when he spoke. The Peterson account projections are off, he said, scanning the reports. Someone needs to explain why our numbers don't match theirs. Silence filled the room. Senior analysts shifted in their seats. Nobody wanted to admit the error. Myra's hand moved almost without permission. A slight raise, barely noticeable. Jareth's green eyes found hers. Yes, the Peterson team is using quarterly averages. Our analysis uses monthly projections. The variance accounts for seasonal fluctuations they're not calculating. More silence. Then Jareth smiled. Not the polite expression he gave everyone else. Something warmer, something that made her stomach flutter. Exactly right. Someone should have caught this before the meeting. His gaze swept the room before returning to her. What's your name? Myra Patterson, sir. Well done, Miss Patterson. After that, he began requesting her specifically for projects, late evening strategy sessions, weekend research assignments, times when the office was empty except for cleaning crews and the soft hum of computers. You have good instincts, he told her one Thursday night as they reviewed acquisition proposals. Most people see numbers. You see stories. The praise warmed her more than it should have. She began staying later, working harder, hoping for moments when his attention focused entirely on her. Where are you from? He asked one evening, loosening his tie after a particularly brutal day of meetings. Small town in Georgia. You probably never heard of it. Try me. Millfield. Population 8,000 on a good day. He leaned back in his leather chair. What brought you here? Same thing that brings everyone to Atlanta. The chance to be more than where you started. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. I grew up in a town like that. West Virginia. Coal country. My father worked the mines until his lungs gave out. The confession surprised her. Everything about Jareth screamed privilege. The custom suits. The easy confidence. The way he commanded respect without demanding it. How did you end up here? Scholarships. Student loans. Working 3 jobs through business school. And luck. More luck than anyone deserves. They talked until the security guard made his final rounds. About dreams and determination. About the hunger that drove some people to chase something bigger. About the price of ambition. These conversations became routine. Professional discussions that gradually turned personal. He asked about her family. Her goals. Her fears. She found herself sharing stories she had never told anyone. About feeling invisible in college. About the pressure of being the first in her family to graduate. About the loneliness that came with wanting more than the life you were born into. You remind me of myself at your age, he said one Friday evening as they finished reviewing wedding vendor contracts. Hungry, determined, willing to outwork everyone else. The wedding. Always the wedding. Sabine's name appeared on every document. Her preferences guided every decision. The perfect spring ceremony that was only 3 months away. She's lucky, Myra said, trying to keep her voice neutral. Jareth's expression darkened. Is she? The question hung between them like smoke. Heavy. Dangerous. Marriage is complicated, he continued. Especially when it's been arranged by families who see compatibility in bank statements rather than hearts. Arranged. The words struck her like lightning. All this time, she had imagined a love story. Jareth finding his perfect match. 2 souls destined for each other. Instead, it was a business transaction, a merger disguised as a romance. The Peterson account needs someone to handle coordination with their Miami office, he said suddenly, changing the subject. It's a demanding assignment. Lots of travel. Late nights. Myra straightened. I'm interested. It would mean missing some of my bachelor party weekend, the planning events. I know how hard you've worked on those arrangements. Bachelor party. Miami. The pieces clicked into place. I need someone I can trust, he continued. Someone who understands the bigger picture. Trust. The word wrapped around her heart like silk ribbon. After months of late nights and shared confessions, after conversations that felt more like confessions, then professional discussions, after the way he looked at her when he thought nobody was watching. I won't let you down, she promised. He smiled. The same warm expression from that first meeting, but this time, something else flickered in his green eyes. Something that made her pulse quicken. I know you won't. The invitation arrived the next week. Formal. Printed on expensive cardstock. Her name written in elegant script beneath the company letterhead. Miss Patterson, your presence is requested for business coordination during executive retreat weekend in Miami, Florida. She held the invitation in her hands, reading it 3 times. A business trip. Professional development. Nothing more. But as she packed her suitcase 2 weeks later, folding her best dresses and hoping they would be good enough for whatever Miami demanded, her stomach fluttered with anticipation. She had no idea she was packing for her own destruction. The Ocean Drive Hotel sparkled like a jewel against the Miami skyline. Myra had never seen anything like it. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms, marble lobby floors that reflected crystal chandeliers, women in designer dresses that cost more than her monthly rent. She felt like an imposter in her department store blazer and sensible heels. Miss Patterson, Jareth's voice carried across the lobby. He moved toward her with that easy confidence she had admired from afar. Tonight, away from the corporate setting, he looked different. Relaxed. Dangerous. The bachelor party guests surrounded him like planets orbiting the sun. Harvard Business School classmates, golf club members, men who spoke in abbreviated sentences about stock options and weekend houses. Gentlemen, this is the coordinator I mentioned. Myra has been instrumental in organizing tonight's events. She shook hands, accepted compliments on her planning skills, played the role of professional assistant while her heart hammered against her ribs. The evening began with dinner at a restaurant where the ocean view cost extra and the wine list required a translator. Myra sat at the far end of the table, taking notes on preferences for tomorrow's activities. golf at an exclusive course, deep-sea fishing, dinner at South Beach's hottest spot. But her eyes kept drifting to Jareth. The way he laughed at his friends' jokes without the laughter reaching his eyes. The way he checked his phone constantly, scrolling through messages from Sabine about wedding preparations. Cold feet. One of his fraternity brothers asked during the third round of drinks. It's normal, man. Every guy gets nervous before the big day. Jareth's jaw tightened, just ready for it to be over. Strange words from a groom 48 hours before his wedding. The party moved to an exclusive club where bass thumped through marble. Floors and models danced in cages suspended from the ceiling. Myra coordinated with security, managed the VIP section, ensured bottles arrived on time. She should have left after the arrangements were complete. Should have returned to her modest hotel room and prepared for the morning's activities. Instead, she found herself accepting Jareth's offer of a drink. You've worked hard tonight, he said, guiding her to a quieter corner of the terrace. Miami glittered below them like scattered diamonds. The guys are impressed. Hell, I'm impressed. The champagne bubbled against her tongue. Expensive. Smooth. Nothing like the cheap wine she shared with roommates. Just doing my job. No. This goes beyond professional duty. His green eyes held hers. You care about excellence, about getting things right. It's rare. The music from inside pulsed around them. His friends' laughter carried on the ocean breeze. This was his last weekend of freedom, and he was spending it talking to her, instead of celebrating with men who had known him for decades. Are you excited? She asked. About Saturday? His expression shifted. The confident mask slipped for just a moment. Would you believe me if I said no? Honesty, raw and unexpected. She had glimpsed it during their late office conversations, but this felt different, more intimate. Why? Because I'm marrying a stranger. A beautiful, accomplished stranger my family selected for strategic purposes. He took a long drink. Sabine is perfect on paper, old money, right connections. She'll be an excellent CEO's wife. CEO's wife, not partner, not love, a position to be filled. That sounds lonely. It is. His fingers traced the rim of his glass. Do you want to know what I think about during those vendor meetings we have? The cake tastings and flower arrangements? She shouldn't want to know. Shouldn't encourage this conversation, but she nodded anyway. I think about what it would be like to plan a wedding because you can't imagine life without someone. Not because merger documents require spousal signatures. The confession hung between them like a live wire. Dangerous. Electric. Jareth. I know, this is inappropriate. You work for me. I'm getting married in less than 48 hours. But sitting here with you feels more real than anything in my life right now. His hand covered hers on the table. Warm. Steady. The simple touch sent lightning through her nervous system. We should go back inside, she whispered. We should. But he didn't move. Neither did she. The party continued without them. His friends grew louder, more reckless. Cigars appeared. Stories about college exploits that would horrify their wives. Traditional bachelor party debauchery. Jareth seemed disconnected from it all. Present but absent. Going through motions without meaning. I have a confession, he said as the night wore on. I didn't need a coordinator for this weekend. My assistant could have handled these arrangements. Her stomach dropped. Then why am I here? Because I wanted you here. Because our conversations are the only honest part of my week. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something real instead of just successful. The admission hit her like a physical blow. Months of late nights. Professional boundaries carefully maintained. All leading to this moment where everything she had imagined was possible suddenly became real. This is crazy, she breathed. Yes. Completely insane. His thumb traced across her knuckles. But I haven't felt sane since the night we talked about your dreams and I realized mine had been buried under family expectations and board meetings. The elevator ride to his penthouse suite happened in slow motion. 40 floors of anticipation and terror. Her reflection stared back from mirrored walls, asking questions she couldn't answer. His suite was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Miami spread below like a circuit board. The kitchen cost more than her college education. I shouldn't be here, she said, standing in the center of the living room like she might contaminate the expensive furniture. Neither should I. But here we are. He opened a bottle of champagne, that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Poured 2 glasses with hands that trembled slightly. The confident executive facade was cracking. "Two beautiful mistakes," he said, raising his glass. She should have left. Should have made an excuse about early morning responsibilities and professional boundaries. Should have remembered that she was 22 years old and he was her boss, and he was getting married to someone else in 36 hours. Instead, she clinked her glass against his. The kiss started gentle, testing, a question asked with lips and breath. She could have pulled away, could have said no, could have preserved the professional relationship they had built. But when he whispered her name like a prayer, when his hands framed her face like she was precious, when he looked at her like she was the answer to questions he had been afraid to ask, she melted into him. "I should have met you first," he murmured against her lips. "Before all of this. Before her. Before I made promises I'm not sure I can keep." The words destroyed her remaining resistance. This wasn't just physical attraction. This was recognition. Soul calling to soul across the artificial barriers of corporate hierarchies and social expectations. What followed was tender and desperate and completely wrong. Hands exploring territory that belonged to someone else. Whispers of need and longing that should never have been spoken. 2 people stealing moments that weren't theirs to take. Afterward, they lay tangled in silk sheets, watching the sun paint Miami gold through massive windows. He traced patterns on her skin like he was memorizing her. She listened to his heartbeat and pretended the real world didn't exist. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know." His arms tightened around her. "I wish I could give you a different answer, but I don't know." She fell asleep believing that love could conquer logistics, that what they had shared was powerful enough to change everything, that when he woke up he would choose her over duty and family expectations and merger requirements. The silence, when she opened her eyes, told a different story. No note, no explanation, just the wedding itinerary on the nightstand and the echo of promises that had evaporated with the morning light. Her phone buzzed with a text from the wedding planner. Final headcount confirmed. Ceremony begins at 2 p.m. No changes permitted. Myra stared at the message until the words blurred. He was going through with it. Everything he had whispered in the darkness had been performance. Beautiful lies to ease his conscience about using someone who worshipped him. She dressed quickly, mechanically, left the suite without looking back. In the lobby, wedding guests bustled with excitement. Bridesmaids clutched garment bags. Groomsmen adjusted boutonnieres. Everyone preparing for Jareth's perfect day. The flight home passed in a haze of humiliation. She had given him everything. Her body, her heart, her naive belief that fairy tales could happen to girls from small Georgia towns. All for one night of fake intimacy before he married someone else. The plane touched down in Atlanta at 3:47 p.m. Jareth's wedding was already over. He was probably dancing with his new wife while Myra sat in baggage claim, wondering how she would face Monday morning. But Monday came anyway, and with it, the cold reality of being invisible to someone who had seen every part of her soul. The pregnancy test stared back at her like an accusation. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Undeniable. Myra's hands shook as she read the instructions for the 3rd time, hoping she had made an error. But the lines remained. Bold. Certain. Life-changing. She had suspected for weeks. The nausea that hit without warning. The exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure. The way her body felt foreign and unfamiliar. But suspecting and knowing were different countries entirely. 6 weeks had passed since Miami. Since the morning she woke up alone in Jareth's suite while he prepared to marry someone else. 6 weeks of pretending everything was normal while her world crumbled in slow motion. At work, she maintained perfect professionalism. Filed his reports. Answered his calls. Attended meetings where he looked through her like she was made of glass. Their late-night conversations had vanished. The small smiles and meaningful glances disappeared. She had become furniture in his executive world. The other interns noticed her withdrawal. He seemed different, Ashley mentioned during lunch break. Quieter. Myra forced a smile. Just focused on wrapping up the internship strong. But focus was impossible when morning sickness struck without warning. She had perfected the art of rushing to bathroom stalls, gripping cold. Porcelain, while her body rebelled against the secret growing inside her. Now, staring at the pregnancy test in her tiny apartment bathroom, the secret had a name, a timeline, a reality that would reshape everything. She did the math obsessively. Due date sometime in January. 7 months to figure out how to raise a child on an intern's salary. 7 months to decide whether to tell the father or let him continue his perfect married life without complications. The father, Jareth, who wore his wedding ring like armor and treated her like a stranger, who had whispered promises in the darkness and forgotten them in daylight. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's the big city treating you, sweetheart?" She stared at the message until tears blurred the screen. How could she explain this to parents who had sacrificed everything for her education, who believed their daughter was building something meaningful in Atlanta's corporate towers? "Hi, honey," she typed back. "Everything's good. Work keeps me busy. Lies came easier now." The next few weeks passed like scenes from someone else's life. She attended team meetings while fighting waves of nausea, completed research projects while her body transformed in ways that felt impossible to hide, smiled at colleagues while calculating how long she could work before the pregnancy became visible. Jareth's presence filled every corner of the office. His voice carried from conference rooms where he discussed quarterly projections and strategic initiatives. Sometimes she caught glimpses of him through glass walls, animated and engaged with senior staff. He looked happy, successful, married. Sabine appeared occasionally, perfectly groomed and radiating the confidence that came with generational wealth. She would glide through the executive floor in designer dresses that cost more than Myra's monthly salary, her hand resting possessively on Jareth's arm. The honeymoon was amazing, Myra heard her tell someone in the elevator. St. Lucia. "Jareth surprised me with a private villa. He can be so romantic when he wants to be romantic." The word twisted in Myra's stomach like a knife. She wondered if he whispered the same promises to Sabine that he had whispered to her, if his hands traced the same patterns on his wife's skin, if he looked at her with the same desperate hunger he had shown in Miami. The pregnancy symptoms intensified, food aversions that made eating challenging, fatigue that no amount of coffee could combat, emotional volatility that left her crying in bathroom stalls over commercials and random kindnesses from strangers. She began researching her options: Planned Parenthood websites, adoption agencies, single mother support groups. Each choice carried weight she wasn't ready to bear. The intern program was ending in 3 weeks. After that, she would return to unemployment and uncertainty. The small savings account her grandmother had left her would last maybe 2 months. After that, she would need assistance programs and government support, and all the things her parents had worked multiple jobs to avoid. Unless she told Jareth. The thought terrified and tempted her in equal measure. He had resources, connections, the ability to ensure his child never knew poverty. But approaching him meant admitting what had happened, disrupting his perfect marriage, becoming the complication that proved his bachelor party confession had consequences. She imagined the conversation 1,000 different ways. His surprise, his anger, his denial, the lawyers who would appear to manage the situation, the non-disclosure agreements, the quiet financial arrangements that would ensure her silence, or worse, complete rejection, accusations that she had planned this, that she was trying to trap him or extort money or destroy his marriage. Rich men had lawyers and power and the ability to make problems disappear. Poor girls from small towns had very few options. The decision came during a Thursday afternoon meeting when Jareth presented the quarterly diversity initiative. He spoke passionately about creating opportunities for underrepresented groups, about the company's commitment to supporting employees through life transitions. "We believe every person deserves dignity and support," he said, making eye contact with various staff members. His gaze passed over her without acknowledgement, especially during challenging circumstances. The irony cut deep. Here was a man advocating for support while ignoring the woman carrying his child, speaking about dignity while treating her like she didn't exist. That night, alone in her apartment with bills spread across her tiny kitchen table, Myra made her choice. She would disappear. The internship would end naturally. She would thank everyone for the opportunity, return to Georgia with some excuse about family obligations, have the baby quietly, build a life that didn't require explanations or complications. Jareth would never know he had a child. Sabine would never have her perfect marriage disrupted. The baby would grow up believing her father was absent by choice rather than ignorance. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But it was survivable. She began making arrangements, called her landlord about breaking the lease early, researched OBGYN practices in small Georgia towns, started crafting explanations for parents who would have questions about their daughter's sudden return and expanding waistline. 2 days before the internship ended, she found herself working late again. The office was nearly empty except for cleaning crews and a few dedicated overachievers. Her desk was clean, projects completed, files organized for whoever would replace her. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor. She looked up to see Jareth walking toward her cubicle, loosening his tie after another 18-hour day. For a moment, her heart stopped. This was it. He was going to acknowledge what had happened. Apologize. Explain, Miss Patterson. His voice was strictly professional. I wanted to thank you for your work this summer. Your contributions have been valuable. Valuable. Like a piece of equipment or a useful software program. Thank you, sir. It's been a learning experience. I'm sure it has. His green eyes held hers for exactly 3 seconds. Professional courtesy. Nothing more. I wish you success in your future endeavors. He walked away without looking back. Dismissed her with the same casual indifference he might show a departing cleaning lady. Myra sat in the empty office, surrounded by computers humming in sleep mode and the distant sounds of Atlanta traffic. She placed a hand on her still flat stomach where his child grew in secret. It's just us now, she whispered to the tiny life inside her. But we're going to be okay. I promise we're going to be okay. The elevator carried her down 40 floors one last time. Past the marble lobby where she had first walked with dreams bigger than her small-town background. Past the security desk where guards had learned her name over 4 months of early mornings and late nights. Outside, Atlanta glittered with promise and ambition. Somewhere in those towers, Jareth was probably working late, planning strategies, building empires, living the perfect life he had chosen over the messy complications of real emotion. She walked to the bus stop that would take her back to her tiny apartment. Tomorrow, she would pack her few belongings. Next week, she would disappear into small-town anonymity. But tonight, she allowed herself one moment of grief for the future that might have been. For the man who had whispered her name like a prayer and forgotten her like a dream. For the child who would never know her father's voice or see her own eyes reflected in his face. The bus arrived with a hiss of hydraulic brakes. She climbed aboard and found a seat in the back, watching Jareth Industries' tower grow smaller through the rear window. Soon, it disappeared entirely. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder of Strong and Seen, Myra Patterson. The Atlanta Convention Center erupted in applause. 3 years had transformed everything. The scared intern who had fled Georgia with a broken heart and a secret pregnancy was gone. In her place stood a woman who had built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. Myra walked to the podium with confidence that came from surviving the impossible. Her daughter watched from the wings, 3-year-old Rayanne clutching a stuffed elephant and wearing the bright yellow dress Myra had sewn herself. Strong and Seen began in a tiny apartment where I worked 16-hour days while my baby slept, Myra began. Her voice carried across the packed auditorium. It started with one belief, that every woman deserves to see her worth reflected in her work. The audience leaned forward. These were women who understood struggle, single mothers balancing impossible schedules, young professionals fighting for recognition, entrepreneurs building dreams from kitchen tables and borrowed money. We started with 10 women, freelance graphic designers, writers, consultants who were brilliant but invisible, women whose talents were overlooked because they didn't fit traditional corporate molds. Myra's platform had grown organically, late nights building websites while Rayanne slept, social media campaigns funded with grocery money, connecting talented women with clients who valued skill over pedigree. Today, Strong and Seen represents over 1,500 independent contractors across the Southeast. We've generated $37 million in revenue for women who thought the corporate world had forgotten them. The numbers were staggering. 3 years of relentless growth, features in Forbes and Entrepreneur magazine, speaking engagements at universities and corporate conferences, success that had started with a laptop and desperation. But the real victory was simpler. Myra had built a life where she controlled her own destiny, where her daughter would grow up watching her mother create rather than endure. The future belongs to women who refuse to be invisible, she continued. To mothers who build empires from bedroom offices, to dreamers who transform rejection into resilience. In the wings, Rayanne clapped enthusiastically. Her daughter had inherited Jareth's green eyes but Myra's determined spirit. She was curious, fearless, and completely unaware that her existence was the best revenge possible. Now I'd like to introduce the visionary who will help Strong and Seen reach the next level. Please welcome CEO of Davidson Enterprises, Michael Davidson. Michael strode onto the stage with the easy confidence of old money and Ivy League connections. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that commanded boardrooms. But more importantly, he had seen potential in Myra's vision when bigger firms had dismissed her. Strong and Seen represents the future of work, he said, shaking her hand for the cameras. Flexible, inclusive, brilliant. Davidson Enterprises is honored to support this growth through our acquisition partnership. Acquisition. The word still felt surreal. After 3 years of bootstrap funding and maxed out credit cards, she was selling her company for enough money to secure Rayanne's future. College fund, graduate school, the kind of opportunities Myra had never imagined possible. The merger will be finalized next month, Michael continued. Myra will remain as Chief Innovation Officer, leading expansion into new markets. Chief Innovation Officer, a title that came with stock options and a salary that would move them from their modest duplex into a real house, with a backyard where Rayanne could run and play, with enough space for the art studio Myra had dreamed of building. The presentation concluded with thunderous applause. Women approached afterward, sharing stories of struggle and success. Business cards were exchanged. Partnerships discussed. The networking energy that fueled Atlanta's entrepreneurial ecosystem. Mommy, Rayanne's voice cut through the crowd. She ran toward the stage with arms outstretched, her yellow dress bright as sunshine. There's my favorite person, Myra said, scooping her daughter into a hug. Rayanne smelled like apple juice and crayons, and the vanilla lotion Myra rubbed on her hair each night. You were loud like TV, Rayanne announced. Everyone clapped. Did you like watching Mommy work? Yes. But I'm hungry now. The simple honesty made Myra laugh. This was her real life, not the polished presentation or strategic partnerships. Just a 3-year-old who needed snacks and wasn't impressed by corporate achievements. Let's get you some lunch, baby girl. They walked through the convention center, past booths advertising business services and networking opportunities. Rayanne pointed at colorful displays, asking questions about everything. Her mind was quick, hungry for information, like her father's, Myra thought, before pushing the comparison away. The food court buzzed with conference attendees discussing deals and demographics. Myra found a quiet table near the window where they could eat chicken nuggets and watch people rushing past on the street below. Mommy, why don't I have a daddy? Rayanne asked between bites of French fries. The question came without warning, as it always did. Myra had prepared for this conversation, practiced answers that were honest but age-appropriate. Some families have mommies and daddies. Some have just mommies. Some have grandparents or aunts. Every family looks different. But where is my daddy? He lives far away. He doesn't know about you. It was the truth, carefully simplified. Rayanne absorbed this information with the matter-of-fact acceptance of childhood. For now, the explanation was enough. But Myra knew harder questions were coming. As Rayanne grew older, she would want details, names, explanations for why her father didn't care enough to find them. Can we go to the park? Rayanne asked, attention already shifting to more immediate concerns. After we finish eating. They completed their lunch in comfortable silence, Rayanne swinging her legs from the chair and humming a song from her favorite cartoon. Myra checked emails on her phone, responding to interview requests and congratulatory messages. The success felt surreal. 3 years ago, she had been unemployed and pregnant, hiding from the world in her hometown. Now she was being featured in business magazines and invited to speak at major conferences. But the best part was the freedom. No more wondering if she could pay rent. No more choosing between groceries and gas money. No more feeling trapped by circumstances beyond her control. They gathered their things and headed toward the exit. The parking garage elevator was crowded with conference attendees discussing the day's presentations. Myra half listened to conversations about market trends and growth strategies, while Rayanne pressed elevator buttons with scientific precision. Myra. The voice stopped her breath. Deep, familiar, carved into her memory like scar tissue. She turned slowly, knowing what she would find but still unprepared for the impact. Jareth stood 3 feet away, older now, with more silver in his dark hair, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. His green eyes held the same intensity she remembered from late nights, in his office and whispered confessions in Miami hotel suites. But now they were filled with shock, recognition, and something that looked like fear. "Hello, Jareth." Her voice was steady despite the chaos in her chest. His gaze moved from her face to Rayan, who was studying him with the frank curiosity of childhood. The resemblance was undeniable. The same green eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same intelligent expression that saw too much. "You look like my nose," Rayan announced cheerfully, pointing at his face. The elevator fell silent. Other passengers shifted uncomfortably, sensing tension they couldn't understand. Jareth's face had gone pale. His hands trembled slightly as he stared at the daughter he didn't know existed. "Is she?" His voice cracked. "Is she mine?" The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Myra looked at her daughter, then back at the man who had shaped both their destinies without knowing it. "She's mine," Myra said quietly. "Her name is Rayan." The elevator reached the parking level with a soft ding. Doors opened to reveal concrete and fluorescent lights and the echo of footsteps. Other passengers filed out gratefully, leaving them alone in the small space. Jareth stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Rayan's face. "She has my eyes." "Yes. When?" The single word carried 3 years of questions. "January 15th, 2022. He did the math instantly, his expression shifting from shock to understanding to something that looked like grief. "You never told me. You were married. Happy." "I didn't see the point in complications." Rayan looked between them, sensing adult emotions she couldn't name. "Mommy, are we going to the park?" "In a minute, baby. Would you let him see the child? Or let silence speak? Tell us your honest answer." The coffee shop was neutral territory, a busy Starbucks in Buckhead, where conversations blended into background noise, and nobody paid attention to strangers discussing life-changing revelations. Jareth sat across from Myra, his hands wrapped around a cup he hadn't touched. 3 days had passed since the elevator encounter. 3 days of phone calls, carefully worded text messages, and negotiations about when and how this conversation would happen. Rayan was at daycare, blissfully unaware that her world was about to shift. "I need to understand," Jareth began. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't slept since Friday. "Why didn't you tell me?" Myra studied his face, searching for judgment or anger. Instead, she found exhaustion and something that looked like grief. "Because you were married. Because I was nobody. Because rich men don't abandon perfect wives for pregnant interns from small towns. You weren't nobody." The words came out sharper than he intended. You were everything. Everything. Past tense. The pain of that distinction cut deep. "For one night," she corrected. "I was everything for one night. Then I was invisible." He flinched like she had slapped him. "I know how that looked, how it felt. But you have to understand, the wedding was what? Mandatory. A business transaction you couldn't escape." Her voice remained steady, but years of buried anger leaked through. "You had choices, Jareth. You made them." "Yes. I made the wrong ones." He leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "I've regretted that morning every day since, the way I handled it, the way I treated you afterward." Regret. A luxury he could afford now that the consequences had grown up and called him out in an elevator. "She's brilliant," Myra continued. "Curious about everything. Reads at a first-grade level already. Loves art and music and asks questions that make my head spin." Pride colored her voice despite her anger. Rayan was her greatest achievement, the light that had guided her through 3 years of struggle and uncertainty. "What's she like?" His question was barely a whisper. "Fearless, independent. She builds elaborate castles from couch cushions and insists they have libraries and art rooms. She talks to strangers like they're old friends and remembers everyone's names." A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "She sounds amazing." "She is. And she's mine. I've raised her alone, made every decision, sacrificed everything to give her what she needs." The reminder landed like intended. Whatever role he wanted to play now, he had missed the foundation. The sleepless nights, the first words, the scraped knees and bedtime stories and thousands of small moments that built a parent-child bond. "I want to know her," he said. "I want to be part of her life." "Why?" The question was blunt. "Necessary. Because she's my daughter. Because I've already lost 3 years I can never get back. Because I don't want her to grow up wondering why her father didn't care enough to try." The honesty surprised her. She had expected demands or legal threats. Instead, he was asking, almost pleading, "And Sabine?" How does your wife feel about suddenly having a stepdaughter? His expression darkened. Sabine and I are separated. Have been for 6 months. Separated. Not divorced. Not free. Just another complication in an already complicated situation. I'm sorry, she said automatically, though she wasn't sure if she meant it. Don't be. The marriage was doomed from the beginning. We both knew it. Two strangers trying to fulfill family expectations instead of building something real. Something real, like what they had shared for one night in Miami before reality crashed down around them. What do you want from me? Myra asked. Time with her. A chance to be her father, even if I don't deserve it. And if I say no? He was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll accept that. I won't force legal action or create drama that hurts her. But I'm hoping you won't say no. The humility in his voice was unexpected. She had prepared for arrogance, demands, threats. Not this vulnerable man asking for permission to love his own child. She doesn't know who you are, Myra said. She's never asked about meeting you. Her life is stable and happy without complications. I understand, but maybe she deserves the choice when she's old enough to decide. They sat in silence, surrounded by the white noise of espresso machines and casual conversation. 3 years of separation condensed into this moment where everything would change or stay the same. There would be conditions, Myra said finally. Relief flooded his features. Anything. Supervised visits. My schedule. My rules. If you hurt her, or disappoint her, or decide this is too much work, you walk away permanently. Agreed. And I want a DNA test. Not because I doubt, but because if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Legal documentation. Clear paternity. No questions later. He nodded. Of course. One more thing. Her voice hardened. I don't want your money. I don't want child support or guilt payments or expensive gifts. Rayan and I have managed fine without you. We'll continue managing fine. Myra. No, this isn't about money. If you want to be her father, it's because you want to know her. Not because you want to ease your conscience with a checkbook. The words hit their mark. He sat back, processing her terms and the steel in her voice. This wasn't the uncertain intern he had known. This was a woman who had survived abandonment and built something strong from the wreckage. I understand, he said quietly. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through contacts. I'll send you my lawyer's information. We'll set up the DNA tests through proper channels. After that, if you're really committed to this, we can discuss next steps. Thank you. The gratitude in his voice was genuine. For giving me a chance I don't deserve. I'm not doing this for you, she clarified. I'm doing this because someday Rayan might ask why her father wasn't in her life, and I want to be able to say, I gave you the opportunity to prove you cared. They gathered their things in awkward silence. 3 years of separation couldn't be bridged in one coffee shop conversation. Trust would have to be earned gradually, if at all. Myra. He caught her arm gently as they reached the parking lot. For what it's worth, Miami wasn't performance for me. What I felt that night, what I said. It was real. She studied his face, searching for deception or manipulation. Instead, she saw raw honesty and years of regret. It was real for me too, she admitted. But real doesn't always mean right. She walked to her car without looking back, leaving him standing in the Atlanta afternoon with the weight of lost years and uncertain futures. That evening, she explained the situation to Rayan in terms a 3-year-old could understand. Remember the man from the elevator? He's your daddy. He wants to spend time with you. Will he read me stories? Maybe. If you want him to, okay. Rayan returned to her coloring book with the easy acceptance of childhood. Adults complicated things. Children simply adapted. 2 weeks later, the DNA results arrived. 99.97% probability of paternity. Official confirmation of what everyone already knew. Jareth sent a single text. Thank you for this chance. I won't waste it. But along with the message came an envelope delivered by courier. Inside, a house deed, a car title, a bank account statement showing enough money to ensure Rayan's future. Myra stared at the documents with mounting fury. After everything they had discussed, after she had explicitly refused his financial gestures, after she had made it clear that this was about relationship, not resources. She grabbed her phone and dialed his number. I told you no money, she said without preamble. It's not money, it's security. For her, I said no. Myra, please, let me do this one thing. Let me make sure she never wants for anything. She doesn't want for anything. We're fine. I know you are. You're incredible. But she's my daughter too, and I want to provide for her future. The presumption infuriated her. 3 years of silence, then he decided what was best for their daughter after 2 weeks of supervised visits. Take it back. I can't. The accounts are in her name. The house deed lists you both. It's done. Done. Decided without consultation. Typical rich man behavior. Assuming money solved everything. Then you've just proven you're not ready to be her father, she said coldly. Fathers listen to mothers' wishes. Partners respect boundaries. Strangers throw money at problems. She hung up before he could respond. But that night, staring at documents that represented more financial security than she had ever imagined, a terrible thought occurred to her. What if he wasn't trying to control them? What if he was trying to apologize the only way he knew how? What if this was his clumsy attempt at making up for 3 years of absence? The bank account alone would pay for Rayan's college education. The house would give them stability and space. The car would replace her aging Honda that died randomly and left them stranded. Security, safety, everything she had worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide. But accepting it meant acknowledging his role in their lives. It meant admitting she couldn't do everything alone anymore. It meant trusting the man who had already broken her heart once. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor, a courier with another envelope. This one contained a single sheet of paper, a contract, written in his careful handwriting rather than legal jargon. I understand that I've violated your trust by making decisions without consultation. This is my promise. No more financial decisions without your approval. No more assumptions about what's best. Only requests, which you are free to accept or reject. The gifts stand as insurance for Rayan's future, not as payment for access. If you choose to reject them, I will respect that choice. But please know they come from love, not obligation. At the bottom, his signature. And below that, a single line that stopped her breath. I'm sorry I hurt you, both of you. I'm asking for the chance to do better. Myra read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulation or hidden agenda. Instead, she found humility from a man who wasn't accustomed to being wrong. Maybe people could change. Maybe second chances were worth the risk. Or maybe she was about to make the same mistake twice. The choice was hers. But this time, she wouldn't be choosing alone. She would be choosing for Rayan, whose future stretched ahead like an unwritten book. And every story deserved the chance for a better ending. The acquisition papers scattered across Michael Davidson's mahogany desk like fallen leaves. Numbers that would reshape Myra's future. Stock options that meant real wealth. Security that would last generations. But Michael's expression was troubled as he set down his reading glasses. There's a problem, he said quietly. Myra's stomach dropped. 2 months of negotiations, legal reviews, due diligence reports. Everything had been perfect until this moment. What kind of problem? The buyer isn't who we thought. Michael turned his computer screen toward her. A corporate filing dated 3 days earlier. Davidson Enterprises was purchased last week by a shell company, which is owned by another shell company, which ultimately traces back to... He paused, his face grim. Jareth Industries. The words hit her like physical blows. Jareth, the man she was cautiously allowing into Rayan's life. The father who had promised to respect boundaries and ask permission. He was buying her company. That's impossible, she said, though even as the words left her mouth, she knew it wasn't. Rich men bought things, controlled outcomes, maneuvered situations to their advantage. It's not just possible, it's brilliant, Michael admitted reluctantly. He couldn't approach you directly. You would have refused. So he bought my company, knowing I was buying yours. How long have you known? I found out this morning. My lawyers discovered the ownership chain during final document review. Myra stared at the corporate papers, seeing 3 years of independence dissolving. Everything she had built. Every choice she had fought for. All of it about to belong to the man who had abandoned her. Can we stop it? Legally, yes. The acquisition isn't final until signatures. But practically, Michael spread his hands helplessly. He owns the buyer. If this deal falls through, there won't be another one. Not at this price. Maybe not at any price. The trap was perfect. Accept Jareth's acquisition and surrender her life's work to his control. Reject it and watch strong and seen struggle without the capital needed for growth. Either way, he won. Why? She asked, though she suspected the answer. Control, proximity, the ability to influence your decisions. Michael's voice was gentle but honest. Or maybe he genuinely believes this is best for the company. I've seen the expansion plans. They're ambitious, smart. With Jareth Industries backing, strong and seen,